So this is the overdue review for Dragon Age Inquisition, a video that itself has very quickly become overdue. This video, as you can tell by the runtime, ended up being a lot longer than I anticipated, which resulted in a much longer editing process. And of course, with Dragon Age the Veilguard now having been released, while I was still editing this, I got extremely distracted and this video never came out. But I finally have finished the edit and I apologize because this is a monster of a video. This is the last time I'll do an overdue review in this fashion because it got to a point where just because I was editing it for so long, I'm like, man, I'm kind of just rambling here. So going forward, overdue review will be less of that and more structured, so hopefully they won't be 2 hours long. Nothing I say here in this video will have anything to do with spoilers for the Veilguard because during the making of this video, the Veilguard wasn't out yet, and everything I say about the Veilguard is based purely on speculation. So without further ado, here is the overdue review for Dragon Age Inquisition. I feel like I'm going to say that again coming up, but you know, here it is. Here is the actual video as it was made in October of 2024 and edited in January of 2025. So yeah, here you go. Finally, I'm sorry. It's kind of funny to think that 10 years ago, I had just played through Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2, all to prepare myself for Dragon Age Inquisition. Dragon Age Inquisition was very much so the game that got me into the Dragon Age franchise as a whole. Dragon Age Inquisition was one of my most anticipated games because of the hype that was surrounding it, where even 10 years ago I had heard talk about Mass Effect and how the choices you made in those games would carry over. I didn't really pay it much attention because a lot of the hubbubaloo around it was how it didn't stick the landing. But when it came to Dragon Age Inquisition, it was very much so more my speed, as it was a fantasy game and I had just come off of playing Skyrim thousands of times by that point. And so to see Dragon Age Inquisition, see those trailers for it, and see this high fantasy world with the graphical fidelity which at the time was pretty stunning, I was like, I need to play that. That's what I want most in my life right now, because it was the third entry in this franchise, what was going to be the culmination of a trilogy. I knew I had to go back and play Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2. And then Dragon Age Inquisition finally came out, and I very much enjoyed it at the time, 10 years ago. It was one of my favorite games of all time. But a lot can change in 10 years. And so, with Dragon Age the Veilguard so very close. Honestly, by the time you're watching this, it's probably already out because I really got the deadlines really close between the editing of this video and the making of this video to the release of the Veilguard. So it's probably already out. Go play it. It's a great time, I'm sure. With the release of the Veilguard this year in 2024 as of recording, there was no better time to revisit Dragon Age Inquisition to get not only the story that I needed to prepare myself for the Veilguard, but also to see if Dragon Age Inquisition has aged as gracefully as I hope it did. To see if it still holds up to my mind's memories of it in 2024. And so I present to you the overdue review for Dragon Age Inquisition. And if you are unfamiliar with what the overdue review is, it's two things. The first part of the overdue review is me talking about Dragon Age Inquisition as though I am just reviewing it. The second part, however, will be me talking about the game in a more story spoiler capacity, because as this review is overdue, I'm sure many of you have already played through this game once or twice, maybe even more times than that. Either way, for those of you who have already played this game and are just looking for more discussion on story moments and maybe your favorite story moments, that's what the second part of this video is. Time codes in the description if you want to skip ahead to that. But first things first, let's review this game for any newcomers to the franchise or anyone who just missed Inquisition back in the day and might be interested in it now. As I have already said, Dragon Age Inquisition was very much the culmination of the entire franchise up to that point, which isn't really saying much because at that time, When Inquisition came out, it was only a 5-year-old franchise, and yet it still had 2 prior games and numerous spin-off novels that all had some sort of payoff one way or another in this game. I haven't read every Dragon Age book, but the ones I have read, I am very much aware of certain ties in this game, and that alone is very cool. But to the mass audience, to most players of this game, the really cool part of Dragon Age Inquisition is that it takes into account every single choice you've made from Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2, and in some way or another references them or fully changes scenarios of this game for you, depending on your choices. So it makes the whole trilogy of games feel like this whole interconnected journey that you went on as a player. And playing through all 3 of these games back to back to back, it really highlights that in a great way. Not only is Dragon Age Inquisition the 3rd entry in the franchise, it also marks a big jump for the franchise, as Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2 were on the Xbox 360 and PS3, whereas Dragon Age Inquisition was the first entry in the franchise to be on the next generation of consoles, the Xbox One and PS4. It still somehow managed to run on the PS3 and Xbox 360, which is where I originally played it. But it wasn't just that it was the first Dragon Age game on the next generation of consoles, it was also BioWare's first game on the next generation of consoles, which meant they had to go big. They had to showcase just what these consoles were capable of, and in doing so, at the time, Dragon Age Inquisition became BioWare's biggest game yet. And that is both something that works well for this game and is something that holds it back in some regard. Dragon Age Inquisition features the largest map in any Dragon Age game to date. Keep in mind, this video is being recorded before the release of Dragon Age the Veilguard, so I don't know if the Veilguard is larger than Dragon Age Inquisition. It might be, who knows. While this is a large game world to explore, it is divided up into multiple areas, making the game more so a semi-open world rather than a seamless open world. Had this game been fully open world, I feel like this game would have had a lot more problems. So the semi-open world aspect of choosing certain areas to explore really works well for this game, where you can choose specific areas to explore and they aren't too big. Most of them aren't too big, at least. Some of them, I'm looking at you, the hinterlands, are a little too big. And it is in these specific scenarios where the game somewhat feels at odds with itself, where it wants to be this big game with this big world to explore, but the things you're doing in this world aren't the most captivating. A lot of the semi-open world activities you'll come across are variations of the same thing. Help this guy find out what happened to his relative, help him find his loved one, deliver this ring to a gravestone, things like that. Things that weren't very compelling in any way. They did help flesh out the world and make it seem like people were living and existing in the world, but these people weren't very interesting themselves. There's also the repetitive activity of closing fade rifts. Fade rifts are these tears in the veil that lead to, you guessed it, the Fade, where demons will be pouring out of. And it's up to you to seal these breaches by defeating all of the demons in the area. And I hope you like doing that, because you will be doing that a lot throughout your journey in Dragon Age Inquisition. And the semi-open world is pretty much just that. There'll be the occasional dragon you can fight, which make for great engaging boss fights, and every now and then you'll come across more interesting points of interest, like a fortress that's been taken over by bandits that if you take out the bandits, you'll be able to claim for your own. But I do feel like I'm getting a bit ahead of myself talking about this game world that isn't all that interesting and is kind of falls flat in a lot of areas, I would say. Despite the semi-open world areas not being entirely that interesting and captivating, The main story being told throughout Dragon Age Inquisition very much still has that same quality you would expect from prime BioWare. The story setup for Dragon Age Inquisition is, after the events of Dragon Age 2, the conflict between mages and Templars are at an all-time high. But there is a chance for peace. There are open negotiations between the mages and Templars that would see them coming to an agreement, coming to a way to make peace with each other. Instead of peace, there's a big explosion, and you find yourself in the very center of that explosion. And of course, in classic Dragon Age fashion, you are an all-new character that you can customize in a lot of ways, which includes the return of race choice between human, elf, dwarf, and newly introduced for character creation, the Quinari. In the gameplay you'll be seeing, I played as a human mage to mix it up from my replays of Dragon Age Origins playing as a rogue and my replay of Dragon Age 2 as a warrior. Next up, mage. I chose to mix it up every now and then because I felt like it wouldn't be that realistic if every heroic figure in Thedas was just a rogue. And especially after playing through Dragon Age 2 in my modern lens and seeing how much friction there is between the mages and the entirety of Thedas, I kind of wanted to play as a mage just to see how I would be treated as a character and things like that. Also worth noting, if you see my create a character right here now and they look different by the end of the video, just know I didn't know what to make my Inquisitor look like until like part 4 of my recordings. It's fine, don't worry about it. As this brand new character in the Dragon Age setting, you find yourself in the center of an explosion at this conclave between the mages and Templars that would have brought peace, or would have hopefully brought peace between them. And as a result of that explosion, there is a tear in the veil. Of course, the veil is very much what protects us from the Fade. The Fade is where all the demons are, so if there's a tear in that veil, demons can come out and invade our real world. And you have this glowing mark on your hand that's the same color as that tear, so you know. There is some connection between you and this tear in the veil, and it's up to you to seal the breach and find out who is responsible for it. And that quest takes you all across Thedas as you uncover more and more about the origins of this breach, who caused it, and what they may be planning. I know this is a 10-year-old game, but I still don't want to give away too many details for the main story because we have a whole section for that later in this video. The last thing I will say about the main story is that for the first time, I feel Dragon Age has an actual antagonist. A character has an antagonist. Not just this idea of a blight, just a dragon that embodies the blight, or just the conflict between mages and Templars being the antagonist of Dragon Age 2, I guess. Dragon Age Inquisition has an actual antagonist, and he's not that great, but he's there. I would say, though, that he probably isn't a great antagonist because he's not really around much. But the characters who are around you are the members of, yep, you guessed it, the Inquisition. Compared to the antagonist, all of your companions are practically main characters in of themselves. I will say this up top though, I don't know if it's a controversial thing to say, but I do think that the companions in Dragon Age Inquisition are the weakest. And it isn't to say that some of them aren't great. There are a handful who I truly do adore, but overall, the hit to miss ratio is definitely higher on the miss side than it is on the hit side. Where, if I were to summarize these companions throughout the franchise, I would say in Dragon Age Origins, they're very much friends. In Dragon Age 2, I would consider them family. And in Dragon Age Inquisition, I consider this group of people to be co-workers, quite frankly. Coming directly off of Dragon Age 2, and seeing how the companions were directly tied to the main plot of that game, to Dragon Age Inquisition, where it very much isn't the case, it does feel like a noticeable step down for me in that department. There are still a few companions who are very important to the main plot, but we'll talk more about them in the spoilers later. You already know. You already know who it is. You know who they are. But we'll talk about that later, okay? When it came to the companions in this game in particular, I never felt really compelled to mix and match with different party combinations. I pretty much stuck to my core 4, I guess my core 3 if I don't include myself in that, and would interchange one of them every now and then. But the companions weren't all that interesting, I don't think. As far as my playthrough went, every one of them did have one little quest variation to them, but beyond that, their plot lines and characterizations were about as deep as the kiddie pool. Aside from maybe the 4 that I hung out with the most, which maybe is just favoritism in that case. Let me know in the comments below. I rolled with Varric, Cassandra, Solus, and Dorian throughout most of the game. Dorian and Solus were interchangeable as they were both mages, but that was usually my party layout, and I never felt compelled to try out anyone else because they all were kind of lame. But your party choices are, of course, very important in Dragon Age because those are also the people you're bringing out into battle. And the combat in Dragon Age Inquisition is the best combat that the franchise has had to this point. Where it isn't so action-oriented as Dragon Age 2 is, it does slow it down a little bit, and you can be more tactical. It isn't nearly as mind-numbingly passive as it was in Dragon Age Origins. Your attacks aren't based on RNG, all of your attacks hit. It's more so just about getting the right stats to increase your damage, to increase your chance of critical hits, things like that. Find ways to optimize your build to really just make it so you just wreck shop out there on the field. For the first time in these games, I felt extremely powerful, whereas in Dragon Age Origins, I never felt that powerful. I would always switch to someone like Morrigan who would do a lot of damage, and I'd be like, great, I wish I was a mage. Or, as you all know, in Dragon Age 2, I played Isabella a lot because she was just slicing and dicing people at such a rate that I just couldn't comprehend. And now, with Dragon Age Inquisition, as a mage, I am out there just throwing fire mines and blowing people up. It's great. And Varric as well, who I had in my party throughout the entirety of the game, he was just dealing so much damage with like every other hit he did being a critical hit, and him having a passive that would make it so anytime he got a critical hit, his cooldowns would charge faster. So he would just be alternating between critical hits and massive damage with his piercing arrows. He was dominating the field. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, so does that mean Varric was the MVP of Dragon Age Inquisition? If it were just about combat, sure. This might shock you. It shocked the hell out of me. The MVP for Dragon Age Inquisition isn't even someone you bring in your party. A big part of the Inquisition is your advisors, the people who help you lead the Inquisition. You have Leliana returning once again. She's in every game. I wonder if she's in Veilguard. Again, this is being recorded before the Veilguard is out, so I don't know. Leliana is returning as the spy master for the Inquisition. You have this new character, Josephine, who acts as your sort of diplomatic outreach sort of character who will help you with more of the diplomatic affairs of the Inquisition. And another returning character is Cullen, the commander of your army. Of course, we all know Cullen. We remember him being the little guy, I believe what I said was the little bitch who was in the Circle of Magi in Dragon Age Origins. He was in the Ray Shield from Star Wars Episode 3. And then he was in Dragon Age 2 as a very strong supporter of Knight Commander Meredith for 99% of that game. And he kidnapped my sister. And just really bad person. He really hated elves, really hated mages. And what this game has taught me is that people can change. Because Cullen is the MVP for Dragon Age Inquisition. I know, I know, I know. It shocked me just as much as it's shocking you right now. But I couldn't believe it. Anytime he was on screen, anytime he had something to say, I was intrigued by it. I was like, whoa, tell me more. Tell me more about your story. And I just wanted to know more about it because he's very much a different character than the one we last saw in Dragon Age 2. Because if you were a person who experienced the events of Dragon Age 2 firsthand, that's gonna change you. And it absolutely changed Cullen for the better. So much so that not only is he the MVP, he is also the character I romanced in this game. Crazy. I know. I'll talk more about it in the spoiler section. And the last few things I do have to say about Dragon Age Inquisition as a review of the game in 2024 is that it's very clear that it was caught up in a really weird place where, as I stated way earlier in this video, it is a cross-gen title between the Xbox 360 and Xbox One generation, that whole thing. And it's caught in this really weird place where a lot of the graphical fidelity looks pretty good. Like 10 years later, it looks pretty good still, but a lot of like the animations just look incredibly stiff. Like I feel like the game looks too pretty for the animations to be as stiff as they are. One last thing I forgot to mention when I brought up the game's semi-open world and the activities you can do in it is that it's one thing if these are side activities. It's a lot more forgivable for the side activities to be kind of rinse and repeat because you can just skip over them and not really worry about it too much. However, for some reason, the minds that be at BioWare, they thought that it'd be a good idea to gate off the main story progression with this currency that you can earn by completing side activities and companion quest lines. Doing those will get you the currency of power, and every main quest requires X amount of power to do so. Except for the final quest, which I thought was really nice, that they just went, hey, whenever you're ready, go do the final quest. But for every other main quest, you would have to go do some side activities until you had enough power to go back and do the main quest, which really did slow down my progress. And before we go into the story spoilers section, I do want to emphasize so heavily to everyone watching this who hasn't played this game, who is wondering if this game is still worth playing. You have to play the DLC. The DLC has some of the best moments in the entire franchise, quite honestly. And when I say the DLC, I'll be real with you all. I am specifically talking about Trespasser. Trespasser is one of the most essential pieces of content in the entire franchise. And it's shocking to me that I have never played it until this replay in 2024. Because like I said, I didn't really understand DLC 10 years ago. I couldn't afford DLC 10 years ago. Things like that. So finally playing it now, I don't know how you guys waited for the Veilguard for this long. That's crazy. It's crazy the things that happen in that DLC. So you have to play it. And you have to play this game. Because I would still say it's very, very good. And honestly, when we're talking about those first 3 Dragon Age games, it's easily the best of them, in my opinion. It pays off so many of your choices and decisions you've made throughout the entire franchise to this point, with returning characters and new characters alike who are intriguing in their own ways, some of them more so than others. Dragon Age Inquisition very much feels like the culmination of the franchise up to that point. And by the end of it, you'll find it hard to say goodbye, despite a new game being right around the corner, probably being out now. I still found it hard to say goodbye by the end of this journey. I really fell in love with my Inquisitor and her story, and it was kind of sad to end it. But this isn't the last Dragon Age game. By the time you are watching this, the Veilguard is out. So I can't wait to see how it continues the story that was set up in Inquisition. Oh, what is that story, you're asking yourself? I'll tell you all about it as we go into the story spoiler section. If you don't want any story spoilers, you have been warned. From this point on, we are going full on story spoilers for Dragon Age Inquisition, and that includes all of its DLC. You have been warned. And as I have learned in doing the Overdue review, pretty much back to back to back for these Dragon Age games, is that the best way to do the story spoiler section is to essentially just do a story recap. That way I don't miss any of the big major plot points throughout the game, because the Dragon Age games are quite long and there's a lot of things that happen in them. So much so that if I tried to just do it like I would do in the past in my earlier Overdue reviews, where I would just sort of be more scatterbrained about it and just do the moments I wanted to talk about, I would definitely leave certain points out. So to make sure I encompass the entirety of Dragon Age Inquisition's story, this will essentially be a story recap with a little bit of my own commentary tossed in there. So the game starts with the explosion of the conclave that was called by Divine Justinia, and you are at the very center of it, somehow, perhaps miraculously, still alive. But your survival, despite everyone else's death, does raise some suspicions, which leads to you being taken into custody by the left and right hand of Divine Justinia. And the left and right hand of a Divine are the people who the Divine trusted the most. And for Divine Justinia, those hands are none other than Cassandra and Leliana, who you'll both recognize from previous entries of the Dragon Age franchise. They make it very clear to you that you are suspect number one because you survived the explosion that no one else did. And as a result of that explosion, there is a tear in the veil. And as they believe you are the person who caused this explosion, they also believe you're the only one who can seal this tear in the veil, which they refer to as the breach. So Cassandra escorts you to this breach in order to see if you are capable of sealing it. And along the way to said breach, we run into two more companions who will join the party. We run into Varric, who we all know, the esteemed novelist from Kirkwall, who we all recognize from Dragon Age 2, and Solus, an apostate mage whose studies are directly interlinked with everything that is going on with the tear in the veil. A lot of his studies focuses a lot on the Fade and the spirits within the Fade. So much so that he was able to stabilize your arm and keep it from killing you. The arm that is glowing the same color as the breach. They refer to it as the Anchor. And so now with a full classic Dragon Age party of 4, you guys make your way to the forward camp where you reunite with Leliana and are immediately dejected by this character Roderick, who is another high-ranking member within the Chantry, but he sucks. Let's just be real, he sucks. And the way to the breach is just swarming with demons. So it is up to you to decide whether or not you want to take the mountain pass, or if you want to take the more direct approach and charge with a small army towards the breach itself. Naturally, I went with the mountain pass, which honestly, all of this is not very relevant to the overall plot, but it happened, so I brought it up. On our way to the breach, we do seal two rifts with the help of Solus, because as I've mentioned, he is very familiar with all of this Fade stuff. So he shows you that you are very capable of closing these smaller rifts, and the closing of these two smaller rifts encourages everyone to believe that, hey, maybe you can seal the big one then. So you make your way to the big one. Solus tells you, oh, this one's actually closed right now, but if you opened it, you'd be able to close it properly. That's the theory, at least. So that's what you do. You open it, you fight some demons, and then you close it properly. And while this is happening, we are hearing voices. I'm hearing this deep booming voice that we don't know whose voice it is. And we also hear the voice of Divine Justinia, who is calling out for help. And then we hear your player character's voice saying, well, what's going on here? Very nonchalantly, just approaching what appears to be some sort of demon monster right about to kill Divine Justinia, and you just walk in there like, what's going on? What's going on here? Anything I should be aware of? We hear those voices, and it is through this that you are cleared of any guilt. In fact, this causes you to be the only person who is innocent, as clearly you didn't cause it. You were there to help Divine Justinia. But in closing the breach, you do drain yourself of a lot of energy and you pass out. And then you wake up an undisclosed amount of time later in Haven, which longtime fans of Dragon Age will remember as a location from Dragon Age Origins, the city right outside the Urn of Sacred Ashes. Once you are conscious, you are introduced to a servant elf, and you are quickly reminded that elves are treated very, very poorly in this game world. As I am playing as a human character, this elf is just assuming I am intolerant, as most humans tend to be in the world, and it's just like, man, it kind of sucks. She very much tells you that people around town are starting to spread rumors about how I'm the Herald of Andraste, and how people are like, man, the Herald, really cool dude, really cool lady, you know? And it's really weird because I was just being ridiculed by so many people because everyone thought I was the person who caused the explosion and killed Divine Justinia. But as I have saved everyone's life, naturally they're like, okay, you're actually pretty cool. But I go find Cassandra and Leliana, and they are arguing with Roderick, having very different ideas of how to move forward, where Roderick's very much like, okay, we need to go ahead and replace Divine Justinia ASAP as possible. And Cassandra and Leliana are more concerned with finding out who was the person who blew up the Conclave, killing Divine Justinia. And then this is the moment where Cassandra pulls out a massive book. And she's like, look at this book. This means we can form the Inquisition. Find out who caused the explosion and why, and bring peace in this time of chaos. And then we form the Inquisition. We send out letters, gathering people from all across Thedas to come join our cause. And it's a really sick intro where we see the Herald, Cassandra, Leliana, and a few newcomers all lined up like, yeah, we're the Inquisition. And then we are introduced to those new people who we saw in that cutscene. And these are the characters who I, of course, introduced earlier during the review portion. The inner circle of the Inquisition, your advisors that will, advise you throughout your adventure. And then at some point during this whole formation of the Inquisition, it is told to you that you didn't actually close the breach. You did stabilize it, though. It is no longer expanding, which is good news. But we're all like, okay. And then someone, I don't remember who it was, maybe it was Cassandra, she says something along the lines of, you probably couldn't close it because you weren't strong enough. We need more power. So we have two options in that front. We can either go get the help of the mages, or we could go get the help of the Templars. That way we'll be strong enough to fully seal the breach. And you have to decide between the mages and the Templars. Once again, it's a tale as old as time. Mages versus Templars. Naturally, as I am playing as a mage, I was like, well, we're gonna go help the mages. We first run into Grand Enchanter Fiona, the leader of the Mage Rebellion, on a trip to Val Royeaux. And she's over there like, hey, you should come talk to me in Redcliffe when we can have further discussions. And I'm like, great, you're gonna help us. And by the way, Fiona, this leader of the Mage Rebellion, she was heavily featured in the Dragon Age novel, The Calling. Pretty cool to see her here. Didn't remember that she was the leader of the Mage Rebellion. So she's not even just a side character. She's a pretty big pivotal character in Dragon Age Inquisition. Very cool, very cool. And while we are in Val Royeaux, we do recruit two more companions. We meet Sarah, who is an elven archer, whose personality is a lot. She's pretty cool. I liked her. I do feel like in hindsight, looking back on it, I don't think I did enough to progress her quest line. I feel like the decisions I made throughout the main quest line resulted in getting a lot of disapproval from her, which made it so that she never triggered more quests for me. And the second recruit that we find while we're in Val Royeaux is the Grand Enchanter of Mid-Summit? Midi-Summer? I forgot the place she's from, but she's the Grand Enchanter of a circle in a location that starts with an M, Vivienne. And she sucks. I'll say it. I hate her. I hate her a lot. I didn't expect it. Because as I'm replaying these games in 2024, I was like, let me talk to everyone, get to know everyone. And so I was like, oh, Vivienne, you're a character I remember very, very little about. You have really cool Maleficent ears on, and I really dig that. That's pretty cool. And you're a mage. And as I've been replaying these games, I've really learned that the mages have a really rough time in this world of Thetis. So I was like, oh, cool. Join the party. More mages, the better. But what I quickly learned about Vivienne is that she's like a Templar sympathizer. Yuck. At one point, I have a discussion with her about the mages and how, if it were up to me, all mages would be free. And then she greatly disapproves of that. And she's like, you are a child. And I'm like, what? She always talks down to me. And I'm just like, don't talk to me. So, yeah. She never got any field combat, to say the least. And then we return to Haven to discuss whether or not we're going to help the Templars or the mages. And then I once again solidify the fact that I'm going to help the mages, because I'm a mage, obviously. Cullen says some things here, and I'm like, yeah, you still are the same guy, aren't you? He makes some comments about how he was once a Templar and how the Templars are pretty good still. Not all of them are bad. I'm like, nah. At this point, I was still very much against Cullen because we have history. Like, I'm a new character and I don't know him in this game, but I have history with him. So I was still not a fan of his yet. Once I leave Haven, though, there's a person right outside who's like, hey, we're trying to contact you. We're a mercenary band. We're the Chargers. My leader's been trying to contact you guys, you know? We kind of want to join the cause. And for some reason, during this moment, I was floating, falling forever. It was weird. Don't worry about it. This is a 10-year-old game. It's fine. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go meet this person. And it turns out this person is a Quinari who goes by the name the Iron Bull. And this Iron Bull guy is the leader of this mercenary company. And he's like, hey, we'll help out your Inquisition. But you got to know, I am a Quinari spy, just so you're aware. I'm like, okay, why you telling me? Just for full transparency, just so you know what you're getting into. I'm like, all right, come on, join the party. And he's like, sure thing, boss. And I'm like, cool, new member of the party. And I had recently learned that the Iron Bull is voiced by none other than Freddie Prinze Jr., who you may know as Kanan Jarrus. So I was like, oh, sick. And I forgot to mention as well, as I am leaving Haven, Leliana pulls me aside and is like, hey, I don't know if you've heard, all of the Grey Wardens are disappearing. But my scouts have heard of this Grey Warden Blackwall who's been roaming around in the hinterlands. So maybe if you could go find this Blackwall guy, maybe we can find out what's going on with the Wardens, and maybe he'll put my mind at ease to know that there are still some Wardens around, you know? So I also go out and find this Blackwall guy, and when we find him, he's doing a very classic samurai style story where he's helping the village people learn to defend themselves and fight for themselves. And then we help him fight off a few bandits, and it's a good time. And I'm like, hey, Blackwall, what are you doing out here, man? And he's like, I'm a recruiter for the Grey Wardens. Which, of course, longtime players of Dragon Age will think back to Duncan from Dragon Age Origins and how he was a recruiter for the Grey Wardens, who recruited you as the hero of Ferelden. So it's pretty ironic that I end up recruiting Blackwall instead. Because he's like, I've heard of you guys. I know what you guys are doing. You guys are doing good work. Allow me to, I would be honored to join. I wouldn't mind joining you guys. But now with that extended recruitment session now done with, we move on towards Redcliffe to make contact with Grand Enchanter Fiona, the leader of the Mage Rebellion, in hopes to get her to join our side and then give us enough power to fully close the breach. Except when we get to Redcliffe, also shout out to Redcliffe being back. Remember this place? Dragon Age Origins? What a good time. We fought a lot of undead here. We get to Redcliffe and we learn very quickly that no one was expecting us, even though Grand Enchanter Fiona told us to come meet her. And it sucks because all of these mages are now apparently under the control of this Tevinter Magister, Alexius. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm a little foggy on the details here. I don't remember how he got them under his control, but he's like, hey, these guys are under my control now. And I'm like, dang, that sucks. But then his son, Felix, slips me a little note and he's like, hey, go over here. Go to this location. And I'm like, all right, I'll go to this location. And in that location, I find another Tevinter mage, Dorian. And he's like, oh, hey, what's up? How are you? Can you close this rift? I've been hoping you'd hurry up and get here and close this rift. So then we help him fight some demons and I close the rift. And he's like, nice, I appreciate you for closing that rift. And then Felix arrives and we have a little conversation. Alexius, bad dude. These Tevinter mages are like the extremists of the Tevinter mages. They call themselves the Venatori, which bad crowd to be around, you know? So then Felix and Dorian are like, all right, this Alexius guy, he sucks. So go ahead and get rid of him. And then you'll have control over the mages. So we go talk to Alexius and we're like, hey, Alexius, give us the mages. We need the mages to close the breach. And Alexius is all like, nah, I work for the Elder One. This guy, he's gonna be able to save my son Felix, because Felix, he's dying. He does have a limited amount of time left to live. And Alexius is all like, well, I gotta help the Elder One so that my son can live. And it's like, okay, well, I kind of see where you're coming from, but no. And so we get into a little bit of a conflict with Alexius, and then he does some sort of portal thing. Dorian and I get sucked into it. And then the most unrealistic thing happens in this fantasy RPG with, you know, elves and dwarves and giants and dragons. The most unrealistic thing happens here where we are introduced to the concept of time travel. It's never referenced again, to my knowledge, but yeah, we do some time travel. We jump forward, I believe, a year, and we see an alternate history where this Elder One had triumphed over the Inquisition. We find our companions in their very depressed, very, very sad, and very sad state of affairs because I've been dead for a year. In this timeline, I just disappeared, and they're like, man, that's crazy. We literally just founded this Inquisition, and we lost, like, immediately. And we fight our way out of time. And it's a really cool moment where we need a few moments for Dorian to cast this spell to get us back to the present timeline, where Leliana's like, you have as much time as I have arrows. And I'm like, that's so sick. We get blasted back to the past. And then Alexius is like, yeah, all right, you guys won. You won, you came back. And we're like, great, we won. And then in this same moment, as we are in Redcliffe, the king and queen of Ferelden march in, and they're like, well, what's all this then? And if you've been following along the Overdue review, you'll know that I put so much effort and so much work into putting Alistair and Honora on that throne as king and queen together. And well, wouldn't you know it? It's Alistair and Honora as king and queen of Ferelden. And it's like, nice to see you guys. I put you guys there. What a good time that was. It really brings back the memories, you know? And they're like, hey, you mages have really taken our hospitality like too far. You guys are like, what's going on here, you know? You guys need to get out of here, pretty much. We're tired of you guys causing a ruckus in Ferelden. And it's like, geez, a little harsh, but I get it. And then Grand Enchanter Fiona's all like, hey, well, where are we supposed to go then, King Alistair? Also, spoilers for The Calling, the book that Fiona is in. She totally banged his dad. It's crazy. Her and King Merrick, they got busy in the deep roads. You know, there's a reason why they call it the deep roads, you know what I'm saying? A funny little connection there, I guess. Oh, and by the way, further spoilers for The Calling. I was in the middle of reading it while I was editing this. I have since then finished that book. Fiona's not just an elf who, you know, had cave sex with Alistair's dad. Fiona is Alistair's mom. Crazy reveal to have that just in a book. I don't know if there are any clues within the game itself to, you know, hint towards this lineage, but yeah, pretty crazy. And then I chime in and I'm like, hey, Fiona, you know, I'm here because I need the mages. And then she's all like, oh, okay, cool, great. And then you have the option to either like have the mages as your prisoners because, you know, some mages kind of give the mages a bad rap and, you know, like some turn to blood magic and some become abominations. So they're like, maybe you want to imprison them. Or you can have them be seen as your equals in a sense and be free people of their own right who work with the Inquisition as opposed to working for the Inquisition. And of course, I myself am a mage and I understand the plight of the mages from Dragon Age 2 especially. So I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. You guys can be our equals. And it's very, very evident that Cassandra does not agree with that judgment whatsoever.
We'll discuss this later.
And so now, with the power of the mages behind us, we go back to the breach. And we seal it. There you go. We did it. Job's done. No worries. No worries whatsoever. Except there are, as we are enjoying our victory and just going like, nice job, everyone. We did it. In the distance at Haven, we can see so many people approaching, an army approaching us. Everyone goes into high alert because obviously we're under attack. So I make my way to the front gate along with Cullen, and there we are greeted by Dane DeHaan. And Dane DeHaan's all like, hey, these Templars are coming for you. I don't know if you could tell. You probably could tell because it's a very big army, but they're coming for you. This elder one, he's not happy that you took the mages from him. And he's like, yeah, you see him over there? That's him. That's the elder one. And then Cullen is like, oh, I know that man, but I've never seen that guy before. And I'm like, you can see that far? I don't believe you. And he's like, all right, mages, that is Samson. He's not going to make this easy for us, but we got to go fight him. And it's just like, oh, I guess you really can't see that guy from that far. Good for you. Amazing vision on this guy. Starting to come around. This is truly the first moment where I'm like, Cullen, you aren't the man you once were now, are you? Where he is leading the mages and he's like, he gives a very short speech, but it's a very, very cool moment. I'm like, nice. So we redirect all of our trebuchets and launch them at this incoming horde of Templars and this elder one. And we're like, yeah, we did it. We fought them back. We won once again. No! There's a dragon. I'm like, okay, there's a dragon. We gotta go. We gotta get inside. There's a freaking dragon out here. So we all retreat. And then we have a moment where Cole is talking to Roderick. You know, that dick from earlier. Roderick's dying. Situation is dire. There's a dragon out there attacking us, and we have nowhere to go. But then Cole is all like, hey, Roderick, he's about to die, but he has something to say. So it's like, oh, okay. And then Roderick's all like, hey, what were the chances of this? It's crazy, these chances. That I am like the last surviving person who would know that there is a secret passage in the back of this building. Everyone else who would know this knowledge, they all died at the conclave when it exploded. But I lived, I survived, and I'm the only one who knows this here. It's as if it were divine intervention that I am here, and maybe this was all the Maker's plan. Maybe this is what Andraste wanted for us. And in that moment, there has been this back and forth of your own character as the Herald who can either embrace this being the Herald of Andraste or just being a person who's at the wrong place at the wrong time sort of thing. And I have been pretty much like, no, this is just a happen chance thing until this moment where he's just like, hey, it's pretty crazy. What were the chances of that? And then I'm like, Cullen, can you get everyone out of here? And again, another moment where it's just like, hey, Cullen, come find me later. Let's figure this out later. You know what I mean? I'm going to redirect the trebuchets and cause an avalanche to get the dragon to leave and then let everyone else flee. And so I do that. And this is the moment where we meet the Elder One face to face. We meet Corypheus face to face. And his intro scene is really cool. I will give him that. I did give him a lot of shit earlier for being not a very compelling villain because he's not very present. But in this moment, in his introduction, he is, of course, very present. And it's felt. You can definitely see why this guy would be an antagonist, the big antagonist for the game. He is an imposing figure with a deep, booming voice that is pretty cool, and he's got a freaking dragon. At one point also, Dane DeHaan, he did mention that he's seen an archdemon before, and it looked like that, so it's probably an archdemon as well. This guy's got a lot of juice behind him to make him be a pretty compelling antagonist. But beyond his intro, he doesn't really do much. And also, you might remember him from the DLC of Dragon Age 2, which I did play, but not much really happened except for fighting him. But somehow he's here. It's crazy. What a mystery. I'm sure we'll uncover that later in this game. He's like, okay, well, I gotta kill you because you're like threatening my goal by existing, so I gotta kill you. And I'm like, no, you will not be killing me. Then I launch the trebuchet, and then about 70 minutes go by between me launching the trebuchet and it hitting the mountain and then collapsing that mountain before he leaves and I am far away. Like, there's so much time from me hitting the trebuchet that he could have killed me. But he just was like, I'm gonna watch that rock hit the mountain. Wow, look at that. That's crazy. Corypheus, you suck. Like, this is where he immediately starts to fall flat as a villain. I'm not even gonna call him Corypheus because Corypheus sounds way too cool for this guy. He's just gonna be Corey from here on out. Corey runs away, I run away, and I'm just trudging through the snow for so long. Like, longer than necessary. Too long, until I finally catch up with the Inquisition who has set up camp, and they're just kind of hanging out. Things look dire, Roderick dies, and then we just do what you gotta do in order to heal as a group. We start singing, and it's such a cool moment. Like, I really love this moment because this song that they're singing, it is to the main theme, and it feels so powerful. And it's also at this moment where it feels like the end of a movie, honestly. If this were like a trilogy of movies, this would be the end of one of those movies. Like, we as a group, we are a united front, and we will come back better and be able to fight this Corey guy. Everyone starts singing. All of the people are looking at me because they are also believing in me as the Herald of Andraste. And it's just like, this is so cool. And I'm believing it more. I'm starting to believe, and it's just a really cool moment. And then Solus is all like, hey, that orb that Corey has, it's of elven make. People find out about that, it could be bad for the elves. I'm like, I get it. Don't worry. Secret's safe between you and I. And it's a really cool thing because he's like, Corey thinks it's Tevinter made because a little lore drop for you. Way back when the Tevinter Imperium enslaved all the elves and really like stole from their culture. So some people would believe this to be of Tevinter make because it is just stolen elven culture. And then I say to Solus, we need someplace to rebuild though. We can't just be a camp out in the middle of a snowfield. I feel like we could be spotted so easily. The dude has a dragon, but he didn't find us. It's kind of crazy. And Solus is like, I know a place. And then the game freezes. And I'm like, what happened? And I find out that because I have so many mods installed, there's an issue with this cutscene in particular playing. So I had to disable all of my mods, and then we go to Skyhold. And it's a sick cutscene, and I like dumb as fuck. Because with all the mods turned off, I have stupid hair and stupid eyebrows, and I look terrible, and it's such a cool moment where up to this point, the advisors of the Inquisition and myself, we've been more so a council, an alliance, just a group of people who would make decisions and things like that. But it was pretty evident that they did look to me for a lot of decisions. This is the moment where they make it official, and I gain the title of Inquisitor. And it's such a sick moment where we're in Skyhold, what will become our home base, and the people are cheering. Colin's giving another great speech, and I'm just up there looking so stupid. And it's just like, come on, end this cutscene so I can turn my mods back on, you know what I mean? And then Varric does come up to us, and he's like, hey, what's all of the heroics going on? I got a little bit inspired, and he's like, I sent out a message to an old friend who's dealt with this Corey guy before. And I'm like, oh, great. Introduce us. He's like, I don't want to make it a big deal, but just come meet them on the battlements when you're ready. I'm like, okay, cool. So then I go meet them on the battlements, and then you get a little dialogue wheel thing that gives you the option to create your custom champion of Kirkwall. And it's just like, what? Of course, it's a cool moment because it's like, sick, Hawk is coming back. It makes the reveal less surprising because it's like, okay, well, you got to make them first. And obviously, it's a great call that they let you recreate them because it's your previous character from Dragon Age 2. So you want to make sure they look like how you made them look. You don't want just the default Hawk, even though I use the default Hawk. But still, really cool moment. And Hawk's here, and Hawk's all like, yeah, I dealt with Corey before in the Legacy DLC. You should play it, $10 on the Xbox store. And then Hawk's like, hey, if you didn't play the DLC, this is what happened. Corey was imprisoned by the Grey Wardens, and maybe I accidentally let him out. But I did kill him, or so I thought. I have a friend in the Wardens who might be of some help. His name is Loghain. I'm like, what? You mean Loghain from Dragon Age Origins? You know, the guy who I worked so hard to make sure he lived through those events. So that he originally would die to the Archdemon, but then Morrigan convinced me not to do that. It was a crazy thing. And I'm like, how do you and Loghain know each other? That feels like a story in of itself, but you know, we never learned that whole story of how Hawk from Dragon Age 2 met Grey Warden Loghain from Dragon Age Origins. Sounds cool though. And I'm like, that's crazy. This is what I'm talking about when Dragon Age Inquisition is the culmination of the entire franchise and takes into account all of your choices. So we go meet Hawk and Loghain, and Loghain's all like, yeah, must be the calling. Of course, the calling is what the Wardens hear towards the end of their life, pretty much, because they are tainted with Darkspawn blood. After a certain point, that will start to take over, and the calling is what calls them to the deep roads to go die or become a Darkspawn. And I'll throw it in here because I don't remember exactly when it happened in order, but at some point, Leliana's like, I could get a message out to my lover, the hero of Ferelden, because the hero of Ferelden, nowhere to be seen in this game. But the hero of Ferelden, she's out there looking for a way to stop the calling. I don't remember exactly if it's because she has begun to hear the calling or if it's just because she knows that that's going to happen to her and she doesn't want that to happen. So she's like, I'm going to go figure out how to stop it from happening. And it's pretty cool because while we don't see the hero of Ferelden in this game, it is still just really neat to know what she's up to, you know? And that Leliana can still get in contact with her. And that they are still very much a thing. But yeah, Loghain's like, we should go check out this Tevinter thing nearby. See what's going on there. I don't remember why. But he's like, we should go check that out. And we go check that out and we meet another Tevinter mage. And he's like, oh, hey, Inquisitor. I was just over here turning these Grey Wardens into puppets of Corey. Because, you know, I work for Corey. I'm like, Grey Wardens, don't do it. This is bad. And they're like, we don't care. We're not listening to you. And he's like, what, did you think the Grey Wardens would just listen to you? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of thought they would. But we very easily beat Aramon's ass. And he's like, oh man. And then he retreats to Castle Adamant, or Fortress Adamant. So we do march on Castle Adamant with the forces of the Inquisition behind us, Logain and Hawk 2. Please laugh. That joke didn't work in the Overdue review for Dragon Age 2, and it didn't work here, did it? I'll leave it in, though. I'll leave it in. You can shame me in the comments below. In storming this castle, we do see a bunch of Grey Wardens, because this is a Grey Warden stronghold. And a lot of them are already turning to Corey's side. But we do come at a very pivotal moment where the commander of the Grey Wardens at this fortress is a little bit uncertain. And we are able to convince her, like, hey, this Aramon dude, he sucks. He sucks a lot. And she's like, you're right. He just killed this dude in front of me. And I'm like, hey, that's kind of fishy. I don't know how I feel about that. But you, Inquisitor, you being here with Hawk and Logain, you've convinced me. You've convinced me fully. Aramond, you suck, dude. And then Aramond, this dude really sucks so much that in cutscenes he's getting his ass beat by other NPCs. But he does call a dragon, and then the dragon just chomps up Clarel, and it's like, yikes, that sucks. Sucks to be you. And then now the dragon is turned towards us, and Hawk is standing out there. For some reason, it's a bug. I realize that, but it's just like, this is really taking me out of this moment. And it's a little distracting, but you know, whatever. And we're running away from this dragon. And then Clarel blows up the bridge. And then we start running because we're on the bridge. And it's like, we're falling. What are we going to do? We're going to die. And then I, with the anchor, open a rift. And then we fall into the Fade. We don't die from the fall, but we are in a whole other mess instead. It is in the Fade, though, where I am able to relive those opening moments of the game where your character was running from a bunch of massive spiders and reaching out towards the hand of perhaps Andraste herself. But it turns out, nope, that was Divine Justinia. She sort of gave her life so that I could escape. And there is that moment of, oh man, where it's like, I really thought I was chosen by Andraste, you know? But as we go to make our escape, we find ourselves in that situation once again, where we are trying to leave, but a sacrifice has to be made to buy the people who are leaving time. Because the demon who is in this area is really vigilant, and I guess will kill us if no one stays behind to distract it. And then this is like a top 10 coolest moment in the entire franchise for me. And it blew my mind on this replay back to back to back in my modern lens, where your choices on who is left behind are between Hawk and Logain. And if you remember, way back when, in Dragon Age Origins, I worked so hard, I reloaded so many saves to make sure Logain lived, so that he would sacrifice himself and kill the Archdemon so the hero of Ferelden would live. But Morrigan convinced me to do the Dark Ritual and kill the Archdemon myself, which resulted in Logain and the hero of Ferelden living instead. And so after that, Logain just continued on living life. And now he's returned in Dragon Age Inquisition to fulfill his original purpose, to sacrifice himself for me. Except in this case, it's not so that the hero of Ferelden could live, my previous self. It's so that Hawk can live, and so that the Inquisitor can live. All of my efforts to get Logain to be able to save one character I created has now made it so that Logain could save two characters I created in this world. And that is just such a beautiful ending for this character, I think. So shout out to Logain. You were a real one. What a guy, you know? Like, he did some bad things before, but he has fully redeemed himself. Amazing. It's amazing. I have heard that, like, the other option, like the default option, is just some random Grey Warden named Stroud, and that kind of sucks. I don't get that at all. I don't even know who he is, if he is anyone. But Another alternative option based on your choices could be Alistair, which is an insane choice to make. To have to choose between Hawk and Alistair, that's harder to do for sure, but I didn't have to make it. I have also heard rumors that the initial concept for this moment would be between the hero of Ferelden and Hawk, and I can't even imagine what that would be like. I would have paused the game and left. I would have left. I can't decide. I can't do this. This is where the game ends for me. So thank God that they didn't do that. But yeah, we come out of the Fade thanks to the sacrifice of Loghain, Mech Tyr, and we're like, hey, we did it. We're free. And then the Grey Wardens are like, hey, where's Loghain? I'm like, Loghain, he died as like a hero. And they're like, well, we have no one of significant rank anymore, so what are we gonna do now? And I'm like, join us, join the Inquisition. And that's a very controversial thing to do, apparently. A lot of people greatly disapproved, and some people approved, And then Hawk is all like, hey, I'm gonna go tell the Grey Wardens down in Weishaupt what happened, or up in Weishaupt. I don't know where Weishaupt is. I'm gonna go tell them what happened here. They should know, because that is, of course, the base of operations of the Grey Wardens. And I'm like, all right, farewell, Hawk. And it's great because it's like nice to know that Hawk is still alive out there, doing stuff. Because Hawk, one of my favorite characters in Dragon Age. As I'm going quest by quest, I'm realizing that the game is a lot shorter when you take out all of the activities you have to do in between to get enough power to go do those. And I am going a lot more in detail in each quest than I thought I would. So this video is really long. Shout out to you for watching this. I appreciate it. You could be playing the Veilguard, and yet you are here. Thank you. And our next quest is to go and find out what's going on with the Empress of Orlais. Because while Dorian and I were in that distorted future, we did hear a few things. One of those key things being that Empress Selene was assassinated. So we go to a ball and we wear the dumbest, ugliest outfit you'll ever see. I hate this outfit so much. It looks so dumb and is stupid. I hate it. And this quest is very different from the rest of the game because this isn't very straightforward in the way that it's just go fight some guys to get to the end of this level. You gotta do some espionage. You gotta sneak around the party, talk to people at this party, get information from people, eavesdrop on people's conversations, learn whatever you can. See if you can find out what's going on, who's plotting against Empress Selene. And along the way, you do run into Empress Selene's personal mage, who is none other than Morrigan. Dragon Age Inquisition is so great. You get so many characters returning, and it's just awesome. I just love having these familiar characters return. And Morrigan's all like, hey, I'll help you out, She points us in the right direction. This whole quest, I'll be honest with you guys, I am extremely foggy on. Because I remember getting like halfway through it, and then coming back like a week later. The pacing of this quest is really slow in comparison to the rest of the game, so it's a lot harder to stay focused, I felt. We do a lot of bopping around the party, and we find out who's behind the plot to kill the Empress. We take care of her. We dance for a little bit. It was also right before this quest where I began a romance with Cullen. And it's just, he's a good guy, he's a nice dude. Very likable guy. It's a really great moment where we have a nice little dance. And I'm like, God, aren't we adorable? And Empress Selene is like, thanks for saving my life. And we're like, no problem. And she's like, have Morrigan. Morrigan will join the Inquisition. I'm like, sick. I love that. Morrigan's joining the Inquisition. I love that for me. And now that Morrigan has joined the Inquisition, she's like, hey, Inquisitor, come check this out. Come look at this mirror. It's called an Illuvian, which if you'll remember from Dragon Age Origins Witch Hunt DLC, Morrigan had left the hero Ferelden by walking through one of these. Her and I walk into this Illuvian, and then we see what is called the Crossroads. It's pretty much that scene from Monsters Inc. where all of the doors are like on conveyor belts, except instead of doors on conveyor belts, they're mirrors that are in place. And it's fascinating to me to see how like fantasized the Illuvian was in the Witch Hunt DLC to the point where it is in Inquisition. It's just everywhere. And she's like, hey, look at this place. This place is the Crossroads. You can do all sorts of crazy things in the Crossroads, including go to the Fade. You know who would want one of these? Corey. And I know where one is. And I'm pretty sure Corey knows where that is too. So we gotta go stop him. And then we come back out of there, and then I'm like, hey, who's this kid? She's like, oh, that's my son, Kieran. I'm like, whoa, your son, Kieran. It's the kid from the Dark Ritual that happened way back in Dragon Age Origins. Yep, that would make him Logain's son, who I had just sent to his death earlier. Pretty cool, these connections, you know? But yeah, Kieran's there. You gotta remember, he has the soul of an old god residing within him. I remember saying back in Dragon Age Origins, I ended up doing the Dark Ritual because I'm like, hey, a lot of time will have passed. Maybe we'll see this kid again. Apparently this kid exists either way. I personally don't remember that, but hey, there's the Dark Ritual kid. Pretty cool. But anyways, we go to the Temple of Mythal because that is where this Illuvian is, the one that Corey is seeking. And we track him down and we find him entering this temple, and he dies. And it's just like, high fives all around. We did it. Good job, everyone. Nice. And then he's like, just kidding, I'm alive, actually. And it's just like, dang. And then on the way to this Illuvian, we do run into a bunch of elves, led by this guy named Abelas, if I'm saying that correctly. And he's all like, hey, you guys, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. And I'm like, no, don't worry about it. We're here to help. We're just trying to stop Corey. Don't worry about it. And he's like, okay, you aren't going to disturb any of the stuff here? I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I'm like, Solus is here and he's an elf and you're an elf. And I'm like, that gives me legitimacy, right? Don't worry. We're not going to touch a thing. We're just going to get rid of Corey and we're going to leave your house. Like, I don't understand why Corey is in your house. You know, Corey shouldn't be in the house. Why is Corey in the house? Is Corey in the house? I'm making a Corey in the house joke. It took me a really long time to get there. That's the whole point. That's why I called him Corey. I'll be honest with everyone, okay? I called him Corey so I could make a Corey in the house joke 50 minutes later. I hope it made you laugh. And we're like, don't worry, we're not going to break anything here. We're not going to touch anything. We're not going to take any of your stuff. And then Morrigan's like, well, hold on now. This Well of Sorrows thing that we've been introduced to, that could be pretty cool, and I might want that. And I'm like, Morgan, no. And Morgan's like, see ya. I gotta go get that well. Because yeah, it turns out within this Temple of Mythal, there is what is called the Well of Sorrows, which has all of the knowledge of all of these elves from generations and generations ago. And it's like, dang, that sounds like there's a lot of power in there, huh? Maybe that's why Corey's here. Maybe that's what Corey wants after all. Not the Illuvian, but the power that he would gain from drinking from the Well of Sorrows. We get to the Well of Sorrows and Morgan's all like, listen, Corey should not have this. He is coming here and we beat him here. If he gets here, he will take it and that will be not good for anyone. And then I'm like, yeah, I hear you. I very much still wanted to just leave it because that's what the elves around me were like, yeah, don't mess with our stuff. But then I ask everyone else and I'm like, what do you guys think? And Solus, he's all like, hey, she's right about one thing. And it's that we should not let Corey get it. And then Morgan's like, I'll drink it. Don't worry about it. I'll do it. And then I'm like, Solus, would you drink from this well? Because in my mind, I'm like, well, if Solus drinks from this well and has all the elven knowledge, that'd be good because he is an elf and it wouldn't feel like we're taking from the elves again. And then he just goes, no. And don't you ask me again. I'm like, okay, all right. And then in my head, I'm like, listen, I love Morgan. I loved her from Dragon Age Origins. So I do have a little bit of a bias here. And I'm like, hey, Morgan, go for it. I know that you're coming from a good place. Like the Inquisitor might not know that, but I as the player know that. So Morgan, go ahead. And then Morgan drinks from the well. And then Corey is like, oh man, that was too late. And he gets really, really upset. I think he sends the dragon after us, if I remember that correctly. And then we're like, see ya, through the Illuvian. And for some reason, I didn't drink the Well of Sorrows, but I'm glowing for some reason. And then we leave through the Illuvian. And Morrigan does some cool spells, makes it so that he can't follow us. So then we come back to Skyhold, and then I'm just like, okay, well, where'd Morrigan go? I gotta go find Morrigan. And then Leliana's like, dog, Morrigan just went through the Illuvian looking for her son. I don't know what's going on, dude. Also, side note, when Morrigan joined the Inquisition, Leliana and her didn't have like a unique interaction whatsoever. I'm just like, that's kind of lame. I thought they would have been like, hey, welcome, hey, what are the odds? You know, that's crazy that you're here and I'm here. That's crazy. They didn't say anything like that. But yeah, Leliana's like, dude, Morrigan just went through here looking for her son. She is in distress. So I'm like, okay, I'll go help her out. I'll go see what's going on. So I go in there and Morgan's like, oh my God, where's my son? I don't know where my kid is. Where'd he go? I'm like, I'll help you find him. Don't worry about it. And it's just like, dang, I've never seen Morgan so vulnerable before. It's really like endearing, honestly. It's just like she really does care for her son. Like, it's not just some plot that she has with this kid having the soul of an old god. This is actually just her son who she cares about. And I'm like, that's beautiful. I love that for you, Morgan. And then we find him speaking with his dear old grandmother. That's right, Flemeth. And I audibly gasped in this moment because I didn't know that Flemeth was even in this game. I didn't remember that. And I was just like, what is happening here? A lot of like revelations happen here where Flemeth is like, I have Mythal's soul within me, something like that. And she's like, actually Mythal, this old elven god, Flemeth is her. And it's just like, what? And because Morrigan drank from the Well of Sorrows, Flemeth now has her under her control. And it's just like, holy shit, I fucked up, I think. I should have drank from it. I shouldn't have put Morrigan in the situation where her mother has full control of her, essentially. You know, remember when we killed her mother in Dragon Age Origins so that she wouldn't take over Morrigan's body? I'm just like, oh no, I'm stressed out now. Now it has me worried about the Veilguard, because a lot of like people were analyzing the trailer of the Veilguard and how Morrigan has Flemeth's crown. And I'm like, oh no, is that actually Flemeth? Is that not even Morrigan? Did I mess up so much that Morrigan's dead? I was worried. I got real worried. And then Flemeth is just like, listen, I'm just gonna take the old god soul that's in this kid and I'll be on my way. No worries. You're never in any danger with me, Morrigan. And then she leaves. Very stressful moment for me, I'll be honest. But we get out of there and head back to Skyhold. Everyone's safe and we're like, okay, Corey is retreating and now is the perfect time to strike against him. I'm like, okay, let's do that. Morgan's like, with the power I gained from drinking from the Well of Sorrows, I can take on his dragon, his archdemon, who we also learned at some point he like gave his life essence to. So long as his archdemon is alive, he can't die. Think Voldemort and Nagini from Harry Potter. It's pretty much that. And so Morgan's like, I'll be able to take on the archdemon, and then that's when you kill Corey. Sounds like a plan? Sounds like a great plan. But before we go on to the final quest, let me just do a little quick companion questline roundup. For Cassandra, we ended up finding and killing the commander of the Seekers, the faction that she hails from, which resulted in her being like, okay, I guess I'll be the one to rebuild the Seekers, because the Seekers today were not the Seekers that they should have been. So I will make them what they should be. That sort of thing. Varric, he has a quest line where we meet a character named Bianca. It's just like, hold on, isn't that the name of your crossbow? And it's just like, yeah, there you go. Bianca, if I remember correctly, Bianca the dwarf made Bianca the crossbow. We just get into a little scuffle with some of the Carta members, and that's kind of it for Varric's questline. But speaking of Cassandra and Varric, a cool little moment that I forgot to mention at the time is that when Varric brings Hawk to Skyhold, Cassandra gets pissed. She is very, very, very upset with him because, as you'll recall, the entirety of Dragon Age 2 is Varric retelling the events to Cassandra, because Cassandra, and Leliana for that matter, were looking for Hawk, and it is revealed in this game that they were searching for Hawk so that they would have like a prominent figure to advocate for the mages and the Templars at the Conclave, which is pretty crazy. So pretty much there's a multiverse out there where Varric was like, yeah, Hawk is here. That's where you'll find her. And then through a series of events, Hawk became the Inquisitor, which is a fascinating multiverse to think about, no doubt. But it's not the one we live in. And then as far as the other companions go, Solus has a small little quest line where we kill a bunch of people because they summoned a spirit that resulted in that spirit dying, and Solus was not happy about that. Cole was a really weird one where he was like, maybe I'm more human than I think I am. And then he almost kills the person who originally killed Cole, because Cole is actually like a ghost or something that just took over this body of a kid named Cole. It's a whole thing. It was a long time ago and it was a pretty short quest. Dorian has a small quest line where we meet his father and he's all like, yeah, my father doesn't like me because I'm gay. And it's just like, dang, that's crazy that they wrote this in 2014. And honestly, I don't really remember if there was actual gameplay in that quest. I just remember that interaction. But Dorian, cool dude. And then Blackwall, turns out he's not actually Blackwall. He was impersonating Blackwall, which I never knew. A lot of people talk about it on the internet, and I see people tweet about it. And I'm like, what are they talking about? I've not heard of this. And it's crazy. He's impersonating this Grey Warden named Blackwall. His actual name is like Tom Rainier, and it's just like, that's a dumb name, but okay. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Your crimes are forgiven. And he's like, you're using your powers in a very not cool way. And I'm like, dude, what? Chill out. He's like suddenly like gonna narc on me or something. It's like, chill out, dude. And then as far as Iron Bull, Sarah, and Vivienne go, I don't think I really did their quests. I thought I did Sarah's, and maybe now that I've repeated some of the other quest lines I've done, maybe I didn't even finish everyone's, because some of them kind of ended abruptly or didn't really have much continuation. Maybe I just didn't realize that there was more to them, but my approval levels with them weren't high enough to get the next step for their quest line. But yeah, definitely Sarah, Vivienne, and Iron Bull, I did not complete their quest lines. Vivienne I didn't do on purpose though, because I didn't like her. And now with all of that out of the way, we go and make our march to Corey. I don't remember what he's doing. I think he's trying to open the breach up again, if I remember correctly. And I don't know if I remember correctly. I've been recording for almost 2 hours straight, so please forgive me. But yeah, we get there and he's like, guess what? I have my archdemon still. And then he sends his archdemon dragon on us. And then another dragon swoops in, and guess what? That dragon, it's Morrigan. She shapeshift into a dragon. That's what the power of the Well of Sorrows has done for her. What are you gonna do now, Corey? So we chase after him and we fight him a little bit. And then he keeps retreating further and further away from us. And it's a really sick scene where as we're chasing after him, we see the Archdemon and Morrigan fighting in the distance and all around the field, and it's so cool. And then he just keeps retreating further and further away until he's like on a tower or something. And we're like, well, we can't reach you. Now what? He's like, I'm going to send my Archdemon onto you, because the Archdemon does manage to knock Morrigan unconscious for the rest of this fight. But Morrigan was able to weaken the Archdemon enough to the point where we can take him out the rest of the way. I think his health bar started at halfway, if I remember correctly. So that was like a really cool thing. So we take out the Archdemon, and then Corey comes down and he's like, oh man, I'm super vulnerable now. And then we kick his ass, because by this point I was so overpowered. And then the game ends. The Inquisitor does something that I am not a fan of. Instead of just like slicing his head off or bashing his brains in, she says something like, you want into the Fade so badly? or something, I'll send you there myself. And then just sends him into the Fade. I'm like, it seems dangerous that he's probably still alive. Should have just sliced his head off, but whatever. And then Solus walks up to this elven orb that I feel like I mentioned 17 hours ago. And he's like, oh man, it's destroyed. And I'm like, sorry, I know you really wanted that restored because it's very important to your culture. And he's just like, ugh, it wasn't supposed to happen this way. Then he turns to me and he says, whatever happens next, I just want you to know that you'll always have my respect. Obviously, I am aware of where Solus goes as a character because I've seen all of the trailers for the Veilguard by this point, and I'm just like, oh man, this is it's kind of getting to me a little bit. I'm a little bit emotional from that because I've been rocking with Solus for like the entirety of the game. He's been my number 4 for the entire game. He's always been there. And then everyone else is like, hey, Inquisitor, you still alive? I'm like, yep, you did it. No worries. Everyone's safe. We saved the world. Corey is gone. We have succeeded. And then we celebrate. We have a few discussions with everyone and they're like, yeah, this is what I'm going to plan to do, this and that and the other. We had a great adventure, but you know, we gotta get on to other things. Gotta go on with our lives. Also, very important that I didn't bring up because I don't know exactly when it happened, is that the Chantry is like, hey, we gotta appoint a new divine at some point, like some point soon. And as the left and right hand of Divine Justinia, Leliana and Cassandra are the prime candidates for the next divine. And pretty much you decide because you tell either of them that you would support them in becoming the next divine. I supported Leliana. And then after our celebrations, I do go up to my quarters and I have a nice cutscene with Cullen and it's the end. And then we get a few paintings to pretty much act as a where are they now sort of thing. Like as if this was true events and they're like, this is what happened afterwards. And yeah, Leliana does become the new divine. And then one of these slides also mentions that Hawk's current whereabouts are unknown, which is kind of a bummer. But Hawk did go up to Weishaupt with all of the other Grey Wardens, so it's just safe to assume she got herself into a whole other adventure. But that's not all. We do have a post-credit scene that features Flemeth. Or Mythal, I guess. We know her as Flemeth, so I'm gonna call her Flemeth. She's at an Illuvian and she's like, hey, I knew you'd come here, you know? What's up, Dread Wolf? And of course, that used to be the title of Dragon Age 4. And Dread Wolf is, of course, Solus. It's revealed that this Dread Wolf is Solus. And he's like, I was too weak. I just woke up. I couldn't do it. I was too weak. And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I gotta suck your soul now. And then he sucks Flemeth's soul and she apparently dies, leaving behind her crown, which we do see Morrigan wearing in the trailers for the Veilguard, I'm just saying. And Solus, or rather Fen'Harel, has absorbed her soul and we don't know what's gonna happen next. And that's the end of Dragon Age Inquisition. But that's not the end of this video, because there's still the DLC I have to talk about. This is so long. I predicted that this video was going to be long, but I didn't know it was going to be this long. Okay, full transparency. This is a brand new recording because I just spoke for 2 hours straight, pretty much. That last recording was 1 hour and 49 minutes, so I needed to take a break. And in the interest of time, when it comes to the DLC, let's just talk about the one DLC that we definitely do need to talk about, and that of course is Trespasser. And this isn't to knock on Jaws of Hakan or The Descent, it's just, come on. Looking at the story content within all 3 of these expansions or DLC or whatever you want to call it, it's clear to see that Trespasser is the big one. So let's just talk all about Trespasser. Trespasser is probably the most consequential piece of DLC I've ever played. And it's different from something like Blood and Wine or Phantom Liberty because those in of themselves are essentially different games, different stories entirely. Whereas Trespasser really gives the game a great ending. Because the original ending of Dragon Age Inquisition sort of just happens and then it is just over. You fight Corypheus and you win. That was it. And then Solus, of course, went off into the unknown. So Trespasser picks up 2 years after the Inquisition has defeated Corypheus. And we're being called back to the Winter Palace, Halam Sharal, because the nations of Orlais and Ferelden, they have some concerns. Ferelden in particular, they're looking for us to disband because the Inquisition is a pretty sizable army that is on Ferelden soil. And they're like, hey, we're a little concerned about that. It's Arl Tegan, who you'll remember as the dancing fool from Dragon Age Origins. He's back, and he's not happy with me. So we attend this exalted council where everyone is reuniting, because after the events of Dragon Age Inquisition, everyone did go off and do their own thing. Of course, in the post-game, that hasn't happened yet. But in the 2-year gap between the ending of Inquisition and Trespasser, it's implied that everyone sort of went their separate ways. But for this exalted council, everyone has come back together. And the first offense that this DLC immediately does is that it shows me that hideous outfit again. And it's just like, why? What were they thinking over there at BioWare? What made them think that this outfit, this stupid ass red and gold and this blue thing, that's the default formal attire for everyone in the Inquisition? It looks so stupid, and I hate it, and it's dumb, and it's the worst. Once you get back to Halam Sharal, you are able to go around and say what's up to all your companions, see what they've been up to. And I'm not going to go through everyone, I'm just going to go through a few notable ones because this is a ridiculously long video, and I am going to try to truncate all of what happened in Trespasser because, hey, this is a long video, I'm sorry. So you get to catch up with everyone. I caught up with Varric. He's like, hey, turns out I'm the Viscount of Kirkwall now. It's crazy. I went back there and I started helping them rebuild, and they're like, hey, you should just go ahead and be the Viscount. And that's pretty sick. It's awesome. And he gave me land there. He's like, hey, whatever happens with the Inquisition, you can feel free to come to Kirkwall. You'll have land there. You'll have a nice estate. And it's a great place. Great place. There's the Iron Bull, of course. And the Chargers are like, hey man, can you distract him while we bring him this dragon skull? He would love it. It's his birthday. And I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll distract him for as long as I can. And I get all these dialogue options. And it's a lot of fun because my Inquisitor is just yapping. And it's honestly really adorable that she's just going on and on about really mundane things. And then eventually I just run out of dialogue options, and then Iron Bull is like, nah, keep going. I'm sure they almost got that skull in this room, right? They're almost done. And he's like, Ben Hasrath, remember? I was like, oh yeah, he knows everything. He's a spy type of guy. Cassandra's there, and it's a fun moment where Varric told her that I was going to propose to Cullen, and she got all super friendly about it. And it's just like, God, I really do like Cassandra, you know? She's definitely a highlight in terms of character work in Dragon Age, I would say. I also see Cullen, and Cullen is there, and he has a dog. And then right after I told Cassandra, no, I'm not getting married, Cullen proposes to me. And I'm like, oh, snap, that's crazy. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. Yeah, why not? Let's get married. I was like, man, this is going to be a pretty cool scene. We're going to probably invite everyone. We're going to go to a nice scenic location, and it's going to be like a really beautiful wedding. But it's not that at all. We just get married right then and there, and no one is in attendance except for a stupid ass dog. I love dogs. Don't get me wrong. But we just met this dog. Why didn't we invite anyone else who was here on the grounds of the Winter Palace? And right after that happened, like, we got married. Great. Amazing. Right after that happened, I went around and talked to everyone to see if there'd be new dialogue that I could be like, hey guys, guess what? I got married. No one cared. I was just like, wow, I kind of wish we didn't get married now. You know, it's like, I feel like they should have just been like, yeah, over the 2-year time jump, we got married. But I guess they just wanted the player to be involved in it, I guess. We finally go and talk to the Tevinter ambassador, the Orlesian ambassador, and the Ferelden ambassador. And of course, the Tevinter ambassador is none other than Dorian, our best friend. I feel like I didn't paint a broad enough picture earlier when I was talking about Dorian, but I really do like Dorian. I don't know what it is about him, but the relationship, the back and forth with him and the Inquisitor just really felt like they were like truly like friends. Like where a lot of other people in the Inquisition can feel like coworkers, I really did feel like Dorian and the Inquisitor were friends. And it's a really cool connection. I don't know whether it's because they're both mages or they both got tossed in time. I don't know, but it was a lot of fun. But it was a lot of fun seeing Dorian again, and he's just like, "Hey, what's up? How's it going? I'm an ambassador now. It's crazy." And then I go talk to him again, and then it turns out after the Exalted Council, he's going to go back to Tevinter permanently because his father has been assassinated, and Dorian now has to take his place in the Magisterium, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a big promotion. And it's another like really touching scene where the Inquisitor's like, I'm gonna miss you. You know that, right? And it's just like, yeah, I am. This feels real, you know? It feels like a realistic friendship in that way. And then he's like, oh man, don't even worry about it. I got this sending crystal. We'll be able to talk all the time. It's essentially a cell phone, but you know, it's a fantasy world, so it can't just be a cell phone. And then we go talk to Divine Victoria, who we all know is Leliana. And now is like a really good time to really talk about Leliana being the new Divine, where it really feels like a gradual progression and a really good character arc for her, where we find her in Dragon Age Origins as someone who is in the Chantry in Lothering, who very much wears her faith on her sleeve and influences the hero of Ferelden in some way, if you let her, of course. To see her go from that to where she is in Dragon Age 2 for a brief moment and all of her appearances in the books, it's just like, wow. It really feels like this has always been the trajectory for her character, even though it is a choice that's up to you, really. But yeah, we did a lot of catching up, which really is like a big chunk of what my recording was. It was like maybe an hour's worth of me catching up with everyone. The rest of it is, you know, the actual events of Trespasser. So we go to this council where we have the Orlesian ambassador and the Ferelden ambassador. I don't remember the Orlesian ambassador's name, but he is so far up my ass, it's crazy. He's just like, oh, Inquisitor, I love you. We'll support you in anything you'll do. Because if you recall, I ensured that Empress Selene was not assassinated in the base game. So they're so far up my ass, it's just like, relax. Calm down, you know what I mean? And then Ban Tegan is the complete other side of the coin, where he's just like, hey, you suck. You took some fortresses 2 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, they were invaded by bandits. What, do you want me to give it back to the bandits? And he's like, listen, we appreciated your help 2 years ago, but Corypheus, he's gone. So why are you still here? And it's just like, because I enjoy hanging out with everyone. You know, I like having an excuse to hang out with all my friends. Is that so bad? That's what I wanted to say. It wasn't a dialogue option. But then we have a servant come up to me in the middle of this council. Is like, Divine Victoria would like to have a word with you in private. I'm like, she's right there. And then Leliana looks at me and is like, come on, you know. I'm like, whoa, what is going on? Some Mission Impossible type stuff going on. And so I excuse myself from the meeting and I catch up with Leliana. And she's like, check this out. Dead Qunari. That's concerning. I'm like, yeah, that is kind of concerning. Again, this is the first time I've ever experienced Trespasser because I didn't understand DLC. I couldn't afford DLC back then. But now, so this is like an extremely fascinating development, I think, because it's just like seeing this Qunari dead here, I'm like realizing we haven't faced any Qunari enemies in this entire game. We haven't seen any Qunari in this entire game, other than Iron Bull, of course. And there is an option where you can be like, do you think the Iron Bull would know anything about this? And then Leliana's just like, I'll go ask him. And then I follow the blood trail left behind by this dead corpse. All corpses are dead, you don't have to specify. So then I follow the blood trail left by this corpse, and it leads me to an Alluvian. So naturally, I go in. And this is also the first time where you get all of your cards for your party selection. And then it's just like, Solus is a big X. You can't pick him. He's gone. And it's just like, dang. So Dorian is back up in my number 4 slot. He's the alternate, you know how it is. In sports terms, you know? I think that's a sport term. We go into this Illuvian and we enter the crossroads, which leads us to another Illuvian. And in that Illuvian, we fight a bunch of Qunari. And we get little hints here and there about how the Qunari are planning something, perhaps an invasion. But we don't have all the clues just yet. But that is something that we're picking up on. And a part of me is thinking maybe I should bring Iron Bull with me because, you know, he is Qunari. He might know about the Qunari and what they're doing. So he might have more unique dialogue during these quests. But then I realized how many Qunari people we were killing. And I was like, you know what? Maybe it's best that I leave the Iron Bull back at the Winter Palace. I wouldn't want him to go around just murdering so many of his own people, you know? An interesting development that happens while we're out there is that the anchor starts glowing and it has a new ability attached to it. And I'm like, oh, cool. It glows now and it like does a surge of damage. So that's pretty cool. Nice little upgrade. And there's a lot of going into the Illuvians and coming back out from Illuvians. So I'm just gonna truncate it all right here. Basically, we find out that the Qunari are planning an attack on everyone, where they're targeting Val Royeaux, they're targeting Ferelden, they're targeting the Winter Palace, but they're leaving bombs of this dragon's breath that will, you know, blow people up, and that's not good. And they're using the Illuvians to, you know, go through all of these places. As we saw, there's an Illuvian in the Winter Palace. There's Illuvians in like Redcliffe, Denerim, I think they specifically name dropped. The Qunari all have ways to get to all of these big places with all these noble houses, and then they're gonna just drop these bombs and blow it all up. Because they're like, hey, they all were cooperative with the Inquisition. They are all in favor of the Inquisition doing their thing. And guess what? The Inquisition, they're agents of Fenharrow. And that guy, he sucks. He's like this elven trickster god, and we don't mess with him. Anything he touches is pretty messed up. So we just gotta go ahead and root out anything that he might have touched, which in their eyes is the Inquisition and anyone who helped the Inquisition. So, and then at some point, Iron Bull does say, hey, I don't know what's going on here, dude. These guys, they must be some sort of Splinter Cell because my people wouldn't do that. This isn't the Ben Hassrath. They're following a Vitasala and they're doing their own thing. So I'm like, man, he sounds invested in this. Iron Bull, join the party. Dorian, I love you, but take a seat. I just feel like Iron Bull is going to have some more unique dialogue, you know? And I never felt like I really utilized him enough in the base game. So I was like, come on, you're Freddie Prinze Jr., you know? And we eventually come face to face with the leader of this operation, the Vitasala. She lays it all out, says that we're working with Fenharrow. And I'm like, nuh-uh. There's a lot of Illuvian hopping, which kind of gets confusing in a recap. So we're just going to trudge along past that. And eventually we get to the point where we know where this antagonist is, the Vitasala, the Qunari in charge of this operation of Dragon's Breath. And the anchor has gotten to a point where it is just throbbing so much. It keeps glowing and it's hurting. And I'm like, I think I'm dying. And it's pretty sad. It's a pretty sad moment because I'm like, nuh-uh, what do you mean? I didn't know this was where this DLC went at all. Am I gonna die? This did fall a little bit flat though, because I felt like it did come out of nowhere. Because all of the times while we're Illuvian hopping, when the Inquisitor is complaining about her arm, she's just like, man, that's crazy. It's doing this thing. But she never really is like, I'm in a lot of pain. Like my health bar isn't ever going down when that happens. I feel like that would have been like a really cool way to illustrate you're in a lot of pain whenever the anchor is going out of control. That'd have been really cool if they just went like low health. It'd be very inconvenient, sure, but it would help to illustrate that you are in a lot of pain, I feel. So when this moment comes, I'm like, oh, it's taking me a lot by surprise, really. And it comes right after a moment where Josephine is also just like, hey, we are abusing our powers as the Inquisition. Maybe we should disband. And I'm like, whoa, what is happening here? What is happening here, guys? So yeah, there was a lot of high stakes going on at that moment. Just to cap it off with, also I'm dying. And I don't know how much time I have left, but I know that the Vitasala is trying to kill a lot of people. So I have to go stop her while I still can. So we go out there and we go find her. There's a cool little door puzzle that I enjoyed a lot. I thought it was pretty sick. And then we find the source of Dragon's Breath, and it is a dragon. Qunari aren't really known for metaphors and their play on words, so I guess we should have seen that coming, really. Here's a moment that I'm sure you all out there thought I forgot. We talked about the most valuable player and how it was Cullen, surprising everyone, myself included. But I never named who the LVP was. And that's because I didn't know who the LVP was until this moment. For a long time, I thought it was Vivienne. But when we come face to face with the Vitasala and we see the source of Dragon's Breath, a new LVP was crowned. Undeniably so. The Iron Bull is the LVP of Dragon Age Inquisition. Because we come face to face with this Vitasala, this person who is out here trying to murder so many people across all of Thedas, really. And we come face to face with her, and then it's just like, she just says, hey, you, turn on them right now. And then the Iron Bull just goes, hey, yeah, it's nothing personal, boss. Boss, by the way, what he's been calling me the entire game, he's like, sure thing, boss. No problem, boss. You know, that sort of thing. Turns out, boss in the Qunari language, let me pull out this book. Where is it? To Winter Nights. Boss, he called, his deep voice sending a shudder through Mirian's gut. That is what you are, boss. Things you do not know what is and is not. You need the guidance of the Qun to learn. So basically, this whole time, the Iron Bull, he wasn't like calling me boss like he looked to me as an authority figure. He was calling me boss as if I'm just a thing. And I oh my God, I hate this dude. You know, I went into this game expecting to really like him. I even considered romancing him at one point because he's Freddie Prinze Jr. and I loved Kanan Jarrus in Star Wars Rebels, and the Scooby-Doo movies were great as well. All for him to just stab me in the back. How was I supposed to know that in order to get your approval rating up and to activate the next part of your quest line, I had to go take you out and fight a dragon? That's not on me, bull. But yeah, he betrayed me, so I killed him. It's the only way. And then we kind of just moved on. We didn't really say anything about it. Varric had one line where he said, I still can't believe Bull turned on us. I'm like, that just happened. What do you mean still can't believe? And we just kept on going about our day. We just didn't really care much, I guess. And then we free the dragon, and then we come across the Vitasala on a bridge, and I'm like, hey, why do you think we are agents of Fen Harel? And she's like, because Solus is, and Solus helped found the Inquisition. He was there from the start. He gave you guys Skyhold, so 1 + 2 = 4. You know what I mean? And it's just like, well, why would you think because he is, we are? You know what I mean? And then there's this moment where the Inquisitor is talking to whoever is left in my companions because Bull's dead, so I just have 3 people with me total. And I'm like, well, we gotta go help him. Whatever else he may be, Solus is one of us. And I'm like, yeah, let's go get him. Let's go get him. So we fight a bunch of Qunari. We fight the Vitasala. We fight this... No, we don't fight the Vitasala, actually. I take that back. We fight a giant dude who's got a big, chunky health bar. Dorian's back in the party because Bull's dead. Bull sucks. We hate him. All my homies hate Iron Bull. And we kill the guy with the big health pool. And then I walk through an Illuvian. And I find the Vitasala, and she's turned to stone. And then there's Solus, who we all know at this point is the Dreadwolf, who is Fen Harel. I walk up to him, and I'm like, dude, what's happening? And my arm's hurting again, and then he does a little hand wave, and my arm's fine for a moment. And then he just goes, I suspect you have questions. And it's just like, yeah, you think so? And then this is where he really just lays it all out for you. And it's a lot. So much so that I don't know if I'm going to properly get across what he was getting across. There's a lot of words. But basically, Solus, as we know, is Fen Harel, is the Dreadwolf. He was the elven god who created the veil And he's talking about how he created the veil to protect the elven people from the old gods who were bad. Solus set up the veil to keep them trapped in the Fade in the Black City, I believe. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, because I'm sure a lot of it is. But based on my understanding, Solus created the veil to protect the elven people. But in doing that, he severed the elven people's conscious connection to the Fade, which eventually resulted in the downfall of the elven people, where they used to be on top. They used to run around Thedas and they would be at the top of the food chain. But now that they've been severed from the Fade because of the veil, they are a much weaker species than they once were. And people will come around like the Tevinter Imperium and be like, we're gonna enslave you. And now the elven people, they aren't having a great time, you know? Because they're enslaved, a lot of the elven culture, like we mentioned way earlier in this video, was then appropriated by the Tevinter Imperium. And then eventually Andraste led an army and all that freed the elves from the Tevinter Imperium. And then as a result, those elves were given the Dales to rebuild their culture, hence the Dalish elves. I think I nailed that, but I don't know why I just told you the history of the elves. Trying to retrace my steps. Solus, he's like, yeah, I gotta tear down the veil so that the elven people can be what they once were again. So in order to rebuild this world for the elves, I am gonna have to tear it down for your people, humans, probably dwarves, probably Quinari. I was a human inquisitor, so he said specifically my people. I don't know if it includes dwarves and Quinari. Probably does. I'd imagine so. And he's like, yeah, to bring the elven world back, I'm gonna have to take down your world. And I'm like, no, dude, you don't have to do this. I'll show you there's another way. You know, you're wrong. And then he's like, I would love to be wrong. He says it in a way more eloquent way. This whole scene is extremely emotional as well. Like, I'm tearing up. The emotions are so raw here, and it's incredible. It's an incredible scene that's backed up by incredible music. I was freaking out because this very much is tying directly into everything we know about the Veilguard. And I mean, I can't believe this. Like, it's incredible to me how long ago this came out and how much it is like directly what the Veilguard is all about. So I have like goosebumps. I have goosebumps right now just retelling it, and it's insane. But I'm like, Solus, dude, you don't have to. And he's like, I'm gonna have to. And then he like touches my arm again and he's like, I'm sorry. And he leaves, walks through another Illuvian. And then we cut, or we fade rather. And then when we come back, and it's Josephine talking to Tegan and the Orlesian dude back at the Exalted Council. And then I come back, my Inquisitor comes back, and her arm is gone. It's like, what? People have been talking about how the Inquisitor only has one arm on the internet for so long that I just like, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. What are you talking about? And then I always just thought Solus was gonna straight up chop it off and then take it and like use it to open the veil. But no, he saved my life because the anchor was killing me. So he took away my arm in a very seemingly non-painful way. And now it's not killing me. I just don't have an arm anymore, which is a bummer, obviously. But I'm alive. He saved me in a way. As we know, the whole reason for this Exalted Council was to determine whether or not the Inquisition was going to continue. And clearly, we have a new threat to worry about. We have a new concern to direct our forces towards. So I straight up tell them, hey, we are not disbanding. We will serve Divine Victoria because she's the GOAT. Hey, Ferelden, you guys will play nice. And it's just such a sick line. This delivery from the Inquisitor in this scene is like top of the line, top tier line delivery. No one tells us what to do but Divine Victoria herself. And we're gonna keep going. The Inquisition stays together. Then we all go to a balcony and we look out into a better tomorrow, I guess. I don't know what we're looking at, but we all look. And then people start to wonder, what are we looking at? And then they all start to leave. I think actually we're looking at the scar in the sky from when the breach happened. Never mind. I might cut that. I'll probably leave it in because I was being dumb and I deserve to be shamed for it. And then we get another little slideshow at the end that's like, again, this is based off a true story. This is where they are now. There's a lot that they talk about, but some of the ones I really thought were cool was, once again, Leliana as Divine Victoria. She's like, hey, anyone can join the Chantry. Anyone can study here or whatever. And then also it says she continued her open affair with the hero of Ferelden. And I didn't expect to get a name drop of the hero of Ferelden here. So that was a welcome surprise. In the base game, it was told that she was trying to figure out how to stop the calling for herself. I guess she figured it out because she's just hanging out with Leliana now by her side. And that's such a cool little way to end that story in my head. Of course, the Veilguard is going to come out, so I guess it's not an ending anymore. And then another cool one is that Varric is the Viscount in Kirkwall and has the help of Hawke specifically. It says Hawke is helping him. So it's just like, this is really just tying everything up in a neat bow. So for the longest time, it really was the ending of the Dragon Age franchise. But clearly, it isn't anymore, because there's also a post-credit scene where, since the Inquisition is still together, everyone's wearing these stupid-ass red and gold outfits again. The worst part of the entire game. And in this post-credit scene, it's the same shot from the very, very beginning of the game where you are a prisoner being interrogated. It does that little pan down, like a sky cam, I guess. And then Leliana comes in, and she's wearing the stupid-ass red outfit instead of the divine robes. And we're all like, hey, we're still together. We might be a little bit vulnerable because there might be spies within our ranks, but we are going to find Solas, and we're going to get him to stop. But then Leliana's like, Solas knows all of us so well. He knows all of our strategies, all of our moves, anything we would think to do. And then the Inquisitor says, so then we'll find people who he doesn't know. And then she grabs a knife and stabs the map of Thedas right onto Vinter. And that sets up the Veilguard so incredibly well, I can't believe it. Find people who he doesn't know? That's directly setting up the characters and why they exist in the Veilguard. Because as I was getting to the end of this DLC, I'm like, man, how does the Veilguard not have the Inquisition as like the main characters again? How is the Inquisitor not the protagonist again? They teed it up extremely well here, and I'm like, all right, let's go. The Veilguard, 1 week away. Of course, by the time this video is out, I'm sure the game's already out, because it takes a long time to edit these, especially because I was talking for so long. But yeah, that's it. I love this game. I really do love this game. And after spending so much time in this world with this group, with the Inquisitor, I really feel like of all of the protagonists, the Inquisitor is my favorite, and I can't wait to see her again in the Veilguard. And the wait is so unbearable. I gotta end this video, this monstrosity of a video. If you liked it, hit the like button. I don't know if I said that 2 hours ago, which I definitely should have, because no one's making it this far. If you did, type in the comments, Iron Bull sucks, because Iron Bull sucks, and it would let me know that you made it this far. I'd be stunned if anyone did that. If you made it this far and you aren't subscribed as well, you should do that. I'm sure you'd like it here, because you made it this far. You survived through this long ass video, probably the longest video on my entire channel. That's it. Veilguard right around the corner. It's going to be a lot longer before the Veilguard has an overdue review, so you're going to want to be prepared for when that happens though, so make sure you are subscribed. And until next time, as always, stay safe and play some video games.